We're here with, what should I call you? Melissa McKinley.
Yes.
Okay. With McKinley Business Analytics. Full disclosure, Melissa is a client. We did logo design and sort of brand creation for. And in the discovery meeting that we did, I was just amazed at your personal story, going back to like your daughter and everything like that. And immediately before we even were thinking of the logo, I was already thinking of this moment. And I said, yeah, the logo, we'll get that done. But the thing I'm really interested in is having other people be amazed by that as well. And so let's dig in. Tell us your, what I like to call the origin story. Where were you born? Where did you come from?
Oh my goodness. I am an Arizona native. We're very rare.
Yeah.
So I was born in Tucson. When I was 10, my family moved to Show Low. So I was actually raised in Show Low. Graduated from Show Low High School.
Why is it called Show Low?
It was a poker game.
Okay.
So it was, have you ever played lowball poker?
Where you try to get the lowest score?
You try to get the lowest.
Okay.
And so it was Show Low. Literally.
What an Arizona Wild West name.
Exactly. The
So you grew
main
up there.
street is the Deuce of Clubs. It's like, they're not kidding. But yeah, so I grew up in Show Low. And in high school, I had a teacher that I absolutely adored. And so I took every single class she offered. And she was I guess you would call it the business teacher.
Okay.
So I took shorthand and keyboarding back in the day.
Right on. I took typing. I know, on an actual typewriter.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. So we did typing on actual typewriters. We did word processing on Apple IIe's. It was, very, wow, am I aging myself? Huh? So I took every class that she offered because I really adored her. But what I didn't realize is I was gaining so many different skills in the business arena. And she was a teacher, but she also worked in corporate America. So she had a lot of wisdom to offer as well.
Okay.
So when I left high school, I worked just office jobs, basically. So I was an office manager. I was a bank teller. I was, name it. Accounts payable, accounts receivable, inventory clerk, and all the data entry.
When did you get the idea that you're going to do this on your own instead of for other people?
So in 2006, I was working for a man who had 3 companies under one umbrella. Mm-hmm. And one of them was manufacturing, the other one was retail, and then the third one that he basically started while I was there was putting people into business for themselves, doing what his tools that he manufactured could do. So hard surface and carpet cleaning. And we would pull people in from around the globe, actually, and train them and get them off and running with their equipment to do carpet cleaning and hard surface cleaning. So through that process, because I was the CFO of the company, people would come to me about accounting questions.
So all of the people that you set up, you were having to then field questions for.
I was training them, and basically in QuickBooks and how to invoice and da-da-da-da-da. And I thought, I should just do this, where I can help multiple clients in multiple different, genres and really be able to grow. I had kind of a glass ceiling, I felt like, my salary. So I just really wanted to be able to grow on my own and see what I could do. So in 2007, 12 years ago this month, I ventured out and...
Well, happy work anniversary.
Thank you. And I really focused on contractors. That was my heart, was the married couple who owned a business together, and the woman was supposed to do the books because she's the girl. The man was supposed to go out and do whatever the trade was. So whether he was a plumber or a framer or whatever he was. And typically in the marriage, it would cause conflict because, the man's out trying to make money, so he's spending it.
Well, that's the thing I was going to say.
And the woman's trying to pay the bills, so she's trying to save it, and there's conflict. And so I figured, well, I could speak her language because she's the bookkeeper, and I could speak his language because I really understand entrepreneurship. And I can also speak whatever language they're being told, like their CPA is telling them or their business lawyer is talking to them about different things, and explain to them why people are asking for what they're asking for and what each other is saying to each other.
Right.
So that was my heart, and that's what I went into. And of course, it was 2007, so it was a lot of contractors for 6 months.
For the first half of the year, everything was going great, right?
Exactly, it was going great,
Yeah.
and then the bottom fell out. So I ended up having to venture out into other arenas, but I really, for the first 3 years of my business, grew everything by word of mouth. Everything. I didn't do any advertising, didn't do really any networking, and didn't really know how. And all of my clients were related to each other. Like, this guy referred me to this guy, referred me to this guy, and so on and so forth. So, so for the first 3 years, that's what I did. I just kind of went from person to person, and a couple of contractors stuck it out. I had one that was a remodeler, so he really boomed actually during the recession because nobody could sell. So a lot of people remodeled with him, and he was my client for 8 years until he retired and sold his business to someone that was married to an accountant. So they no longer needed me.
Yeah.
And then I caught on to a manufacturing client that I've had now 10 and a half years. They're still my client. They were related to the housing industry, so they went down significantly, didn't need an accounting department. And now that everything is starting to boom back up, it's still a lot to handle, but I'm still the only accounting person in there.
So you have kind of two tracks. You have the bookkeep side of things, and then the CFO side of things. And then what we're trying to develop more now, right, is the CFO side.
So I've always introduced myself as a bookkeeper who also does CFO services, and it just doesn't work in the brains of my clients. They just see me as a bookkeeper. So 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago now, I started hiring bookkeepers so that they could focus on the bookkeeping side. And there's a big difference between what I was doing and what they're doing. So they're really focused on the remote, by remote only. They work most days in their slippers, and just it's all digital and electronic, and it's not face to face, where what I had been growing that whole time was face-to-face. So I was trying to break into the CFO level stuff with my clients, but I just got stuck on the bookkeeping side. So I really decided to try and start to separate the two and separate me from that pack of bookkeepers. So that's what I've been doing and focusing on the last 3.5 years. So you're more like
a CFO service that has the ability to gather information because you have a team of bookkeepers.
Exactly.
Rather than having to outsource the bookkeeping to find out where's this data.
Right.
Or to make sense of data that's not even there.
Exactly. And to be that check and balance, because even though they're my team, I'm still checking their work and making them into better bookkeepers, because most bookkeepers don't have a business ownership mind.
Right.
They don't operate that way. Their personalities aren't that way. But I'm that way. So when I look at financials, I'm thinking about how can we grow this company? Where are the holes in the bucket? What's going on from a strategic standpoint rather than just
everything in its place. Right?
Everything in its place. Yeah. Exactly.
Now, here's the interesting part. Let's get to that. McKinley Business Analytics, right? So we settled on McKinley.
Yes.
And mainly because of the strength reference in there, but also because that's who you are.
Yes.
And so let's go back in time again.
My personal story.
Yeah, let's get into that, because that I found super interesting.
Well,
so
rather it's unfortunately or fortunately, I'm not sure yet, but as a woman, we are so tied to our name, and when our name changes, and it makes our story very public. So a man can be married and divorced and nobody really knows unless they know him. But a woman, especially a business owner woman, can't really hide that fact, especially if her name is attached to anything that has to do with the business. So when you and I met and we started talking about branding and rebranding what I was trying to do with the CFO side, you originally wanted to use my last name, and my last name.
You're like, well, that's about to change.
It's about to change. So
interesting. Tell me about that.
We might have a problem here. Yeah. So the story is, when I was in high school, I started dating a guy that I was introduced to through a mutual friend, and we dated for a couple of years, and we got married when I was right out of high school. He was already out of high school. So he was 4 years older than I was. So he was already out of high school. And we got married, and, everyone told us not to do it. It was too soon, da-da-da-da-da. And, of course, we thought we would defy the odds, and 18 months later, we split up. So it was just, we were too young. We really didn't give each other a chance to grow up and mature. And I was kind of fed up with things that he was doing and vice versa, and we called it quits. Yeah. So no children, so we just totally lost track of each other. Yeah. And I always knew kind of where he was and what he was doing, just because we were all in a small town.
Okay, so you were still up in...
Yeah, you still kind of know, but I only ran into him one time in 28 years, honestly. So I hadn't seen him. And last year when I split up with the husband I was with and got divorced and everything, he and I started talking. The first husband and I started talking, and he was in a place where he was in a toxic relationship and had done a lot of changing in his own life. And in his own words, he felt too good to be as miserable as he was. So he really needed to make a huge change. So we started talking. We hashed out all of the things that we had put each other through. So we didn't ignore the past. We kind of brought it forward and worked it through like we had never before. Yeah. And decided to meet up and see if this was something or if it was just, us talking on the phone. Yeah. And it was something.
Right on.
So apparently when I was 16, I did know what I wanted. I just didn't give it a chance to mature and grow into the man that he is now. And it's undeniable. I've literally spent my life thinking that love was something that was for other people. And I now know that's not true. So it's exciting. It's a very exciting time for both of us.
So but we can't. Does that give you that like energy you need now to like really just go headlong into your business? That supports that sort of fuel, I guess, emotional fuel.
In a way that I've never had before. So owning my business for the last 12 years, I've kind of felt like I've done it completely alone. And now it's completely
you're
different.
Energized.
Very energized. I have, and so is he. We're both very creative in our thinking and the way we approach the future. And it's very exciting to have someone that you're planning a future with, and this one's for real. Like this is not. I'm not marrying this man out of practicality, which is all I've ever done since him. So this is like. Wow. I'm actually thankful that I didn't experience how powerful this feeling was until now, because I don't think I could have handled it at 20. Yeah. I just don't think I could have handled it. So at 48, it's a completely different ballgame. Yeah. But I also have a grandchild coming in July. So
yes, that's interesting.
We can't just rush out and plan a wedding and get married and do all the things we want to do. So when you and I were talking, and I was like, well, my name's going to change. It's not going to change tomorrow, but it's going to change. Yeah. And I'm certainly not going to want to keep my old name, on my business when my name changes. So we decided, well, McKinley's even better. Yeah. So legally, I have the right to go back to it because it was my name 30 years ago. So I'm just going back to it. And I'm changing everything. And before we get married. So when we get married, I won't have to change anything. It'll already be done. Yeah, cool. So, and he's very excited about that too. So, yeah that's it.
Did you show him the logo and everything?
He loves it.
Right on.
Loves it.
Good.
Yeah. We both kind of liked the mountain, but I mean, as soon as you turn that page and you see that third one, because you guys gave me 3 choices, that third one was just, that hit it out of the ballpark as far as I'm concerned.
We'll have to get Gabe to throw that in a little bubble in the bottom of the screen over here somewhere. Now, when we were talking and you were with the design team there, there was this backstory about your daughter and her name and all that kind of stuff. Now that was what I found super interesting. So dig into that if you're comfortable.
Again,
with that.
More of my personal story. It's so I've been married 3 times, and none of them are the biological father of my daughter. I had a romance in between 1 and 2 that ended because I was pregnant. It was like, well, here's $450. You can take care of that. And of course I didn't. Yeah. So, and that's another story. That's a tearjerker story. But anyways, So I obviously went through with the pregnancy and dumped him. So I'll keep this. You can leave.
Good choice.
It was a very good choice. It was a tremendously good choice. And so I named her Hope because that's what she was, as far as I was concerned. That's exactly what she was. And I knew that at the time I wanted that to be her middle name, so I just chose my grandma was near, passing away, and she was depressed because nobody used her name. So I just used her first name, and I won't go into what that is because we ended up changing it. Yeah. So that originally was her name with her biological father's last name. Yeah. And then my second husband decided that he wanted to adopt her. So we went through with the adoption when she was 7, I believe she was 7. Mm-hmm. And when you go through with an adoption of a step parent to a stepchild, you have the option to change the child's whole name. And by that time, my grandma had passed away, and she hadn't passed away, but she was already to the point of Alzheimer's that she just kind of wasn't there. So I knew I wouldn't break her heart because she would never even know. So I went ahead and started I'm a Christian, so I pray about pretty much everything. So I started praying about what her name should be. Yeah. And I still wanted to keep Hope. Okay. So Hope, in the Hebrew language, there's a couple of different Hebrew words for hope, but there's one in particular that I kind of stuck to, and it's tikva. And tikva is the red scarlet cord that Rahab hung out of the wall so that when the children of Israel destroyed Jericho, they would save her family. They said, if you hang this red scarlet cord out of your window, then we'll know you're in there and we won't destroy your family.
We won't wreck that building, but we'll do everything else.
Everything else.
Okay.
So tikva is that red scarlet cord. So it's hope in that way. So, so that's what hope means. And so then I started thinking about what her middle name should be, and I was originally only going to pick one. And I landed on Joella. And for some reason, and I know that Joel means the Lord is God, Yahweh is God. But for some reason, I landed on something that said it meant God speaks. And so Joella is just the female form of Joel. Okay. So I was like, oh, so, the red scarlet cord and God speaks, and that's pretty powerful. And then I ended up with a third one, and that's Shalom. And Shalom to us just means peace. Like if we hear somebody saying Shalom, we think they're just saying peace, you know? Yeah. And in a very primitive way, that's kind of what it means. But it doesn't in the Hebrew language, in the original Hebrew language, when they would use their picture language, the Paleo Hebrew, and they would write it out. It was almost like a story. So the story of Shalom is actually the one who destroys the authority of the one who binds us to chaos. So
that's interesting.
That's a lot more than just saying peace. So her whole name ends up meaning through the red scarlet cord, God spoke, and the authority of the one who binds us to chaos was destroyed. So the story of the gospel is basically what her name means. And of course, if you know my daughter, she came home one day when she was in kindergarten, mad because I named her a word. It's a word. Hope is a word. It's not a name. It's a word. And then when I changed her name to this and I explained the whole story to her, she said, now I'm not just a word. I'm a sentence. So she wasn't very happy. How old is she now? She's 24.
So I guess does she have to tell everybody this story too?
She doesn't. She does not tell anybody this story. She usually just drops the Shalom and uses the Hope Joella and her new last name. So she's
it's
still
there,
kind
though.
of.
Yeah.
But the story is there. One day she'll probably embrace it a lot more than she is now. After she has her own children, I'm sure.
That's where your grandchild's coming from?
Yes.
Right on?
She's my only, so
okay.
she's it.
So that was the part that I found so interesting, was the naming and just the thought that goes into that, and the deeper meaning of it. Being somebody that obviously looks at logos and things like that and try to extract a little bit of meaning out of it.
Right.
I found that to be much deeper. So that was pretty interesting. Let's see, where are you taking your business?
So now,
what's your vision for?
I'm really focused on growing the McKinley Business Analytics side of the CFO services. And it's funny because as soon as you start focusing on something, that's what grows. And it's been a tremendous lesson for me. So I took my focus off of doing people's books and put it on helping them to grow their business, helping them to strategize, helping them to get funding.
Because people say they focus on stuff, but like, how do
What
you?
did I do?
Yeah, exactly. Because sometimes they could be staring at paper and being like, I don't know what to do. I'm focused on this, but
right.
I'm
So
frozen,
right. So the first 3 years of my business, I as I said, I just grew it by word of mouth. So client to client to client to client. After that, I started networking. And I didn't know where to start. And someone that I knew from a different group, I don't even remember how we had met, but somehow I had met this man. He was an IT provider, and he called me one day and said, "Hey, I'm a part of this group called BNI, and I'd like you to come and take a look at it." And I'd never heard of BNI before. I said, "What does that even mean?" Business Network International. I was like, okay. So I went, and I had someone working with me at the time. And so I had him do that. I was like, and I used to call it the old man's coffee club.
Yeah.
You go to your old man's coffee club and I'll go actually work. That was kind of my philosophy about the whole thing. Well, one day I went with him, and I was like amazed that people were actually passing business. And I mean, that was pretty tremendous to me.
So in terms of focus, you started focusing more on like meeting people and networking and like building the business?
Kind of. So it's kind of an evolution story. So he ended up going a different way, and I ended up the member of that BNI group. And I was a member of that BNI group for a couple of years. I outgrew my position there. I got so busy. But my daughter was in college, and I couldn't afford to hire more employees. So I literally had to leave the group just because I didn't need any more referrals. Like, if you gave me another referral, I was going to bust. And again, I was in that group as a bookkeeper. So the second time I joined BNI, it was a few years later, I got to the point where I had hired some people and I had some bandwidth. So I went ahead and rejoined BNI, knowing that was a really good way to grow my business. And again, joined it as a bookkeeper. And I was with them for a couple of years. And then I started hiring employees that were more like my caliber of bookkeepers, instead of just staff that could do data entry for me and kind of the grunt work stuff. I hired someone who was my level in bookkeeping.
Okay. So
and I put her in a BNI group. So then I was like, well, I'll just let you do that part, and I'm going to focus on my business.
That's a tough thing for an entrepreneur to do sometimes, right?
Hire somebody like you.
Well, as good or better, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because you feel like you're supposed to be doing everything yourself, and
right. I'm supposed to wear every hat.
Now, what if this person's better than But once that's where you get your true growth, right?
Exactly.
I
typically
surrounding
hire
yourself with people that are actually better.
Yeah, better in certain areas than I am. And she has definitely a big niche.
Yeah.
Legal accounting is her big niche, like the trust account for lawyers. That's her big thing.
So you're filling all of your sort of like your vulnerabilities, weaknesses, and shoring it up. Yeah.
Exactly. So then I left BNI again, thinking, well, I'm just going to let my employees do that part, and I'm going to go on and focus on other things. So then last summer, I got a phone call from someone I've been in BNI with before, and he says, "Hey, I am chartering this big group. You've got to come down and check it out."
Is that Nate? Yeah.
No, okay. Nate Dominguez.
Yeah.
He's in it, but he wasn't the one who called me.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The one who called me is actually the real estate agent in the group. His name is Greg Hyder. So he had called me and said, "Come down, check it out.
Yeah.
I want you to be the bookkeeper in this group." So I come in and I look at it and I said, "I don't want to be the bookkeeper in this group. I want to be the CFO provider in this group. And I want you to find a bookkeeper and put in this group. Because she and I will be great referral partners with each other.
Yeah.
And we'll have good synergy with each other." And he was, "Oh, okay,
here's what I want you to do. You're just like, bam, bam, bam.
this is what I'm going to do. So when I originally joined, it's called BNI Paragon. When I originally joined that group, everybody that I know from BNI, and I know a lot of people from BNI, there was a lot of them in that room. And for me to stand up and not talk about bookkeeping was like, whoa, what is she doing?
What you doing now, yeah.
And so that's what I mean. I changed my focus on what clients I'm after. I'm not after those bookkeeping clients. I am after the clients who need that CFO level.
In terms of all the stuff you put out and the stuff you're attracting and everything it had was focused on that, and you cut out all the other stuff.
Exactly. And that's what I mean by changing my focus. So we just chartered in October. It's a very new group. And that's where I met your dad.
Yeah.
And
for the Old Man's Coffee Club?
The Old Man's Coffee Club.
When he hears this, he's
which it is not. And your dad did his featured presentation, his 10-minute, and he talked a lot about branding. And I was in the middle of trying to rebrand with someone else, and I just wasn't happy with the results at all. And so then I approached him and said, help me. And so that's what I mean by changing my focus. So now when I'm talking to anyone in a networking arena, I'm not talking about bookkeeping.
Right.
I am talking about CFO level. And as soon as I did that, even the client that I've had for 10 and a half years, the manufacturing client that's related to the home builders industry, she has ended up injured, which is not fortunate for anyone, except that I've been able to step into that CFO role even with her.
Right.
After 10 and a half years of just doing her books, I am now running her production department. I'm now helping her management team to look at things in a different perspective. And I'm hoping that by the time she's healed and she comes back, she sees some real permanent changes. So it's like I went to the gym and just decided I'm going to exercise this muscle, and this muscle has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and better and better and better, and it's been an amazing ride in the last 4 months, 5 months.
That's a pretty quick turnaround.
It is a pretty quick
Yeah.
mind shift. Yes.
So yeah, focus has made all the difference.
Exactly.
So it's pretty similar to what we've been doing. You know, obviously we do mostly vehicle wraps,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of people have come to us for other things, but we've never really focused on that. And so in the last, since we joined that BNI group,
Mm-hmm.
really been talking logo branding strategy. Why are we doing this? What should we do? Because that affects everything else, including, you know, the wrap side of things. And if we can get that squared away, then the whole overall company that we're helping will be more effective, rather than just, you know, like you said, burying your head into like the bookkeeping side of it, or only the graphic side, and it's not connected to the whole sort of holistic marketing approach, then it's not as effective. And the same thing with you,
Exactly.
if your numbers are just numbers and bookkeeping, and you don't understand, well, actually we could, with this data, here's an opportunity. You can either do it or not, but presenting stuff like that is not part of the bookkeeper's realm, right? Like, they're just like, okay, everything balances, and here's some extra money or whatnot, and you're like, ooh, I know what we can do with that.
There's so many different facets to strategizing with a company. So one of the things that comes up a lot, so I'll give away a little bit of the secret sauce.
Yeah.
One of the things that comes up a lot for me is, should I start, I have a lot of serialpreneurs that are clients. So they have multiple businesses, multiple LLCs.
Yeah.
Should I bring this new venture under this LLC, or should I just make it its own, kind of thing? Or I've got these two, but should I just merge them because they really are kind of the same thing?
Right.
And so having this conversation with a bookkeeper, they're clueless. I don't know, whatever you decide to do,
right? Yeah.
I'll do on your books,
Yeah.
Yeah. And not clueless, but just they don't know where to start with that question.
Right.
So where you start with that question, where I start with that question is looking at what the two LLCs are supposed to be doing. So for instance, if you have, let's talk about you guys, because you have multiple ventures that
Right.
you guys are doing. So let's just talk about Smart Wrap as opposed to branding. And I'm just going to use this as an example. You can obviously do both under the same hat.
Yeah.
But if you came to me and said, should I make this 2 separate LLCs or should I leave it under one? Well, let's say for some reason you had really high workman's comp rates under Smart Wrap.
Yeah.
For some reason you had some kind of an injury or something that just really blew up your rates really bad. Your EMOD is just horrible. And you're going to have 5 more employees under this other division, if you will. Well, we wouldn't want to pay those high workman's comp rates under, that you have under your vehicle wrap, for instance.
So then
obviously you don't
split it
have
apart.
that. So splitting them apart is probably better because you don't want these people's payroll to be considered under this EMOD, kind of a
That's
thing.
a real interesting way to look at it because, there's practical money involved in that kind of thing. I've always thought about it from, okay, so how does the public perceive it? And,
Right.
the branding side of it, like,
Right.
should we have a brand extension, or that kind of thing. And that hadn't entered my head that, okay, well, wait a sec. You can move stuff around and save some money.
Save some money, maybe even on your general liability insurance. I mean, it's a question for your insurance agent. I don't know
You
the answer
have to be doing different things,
but
though,
it's
right? You can't
definitely-
just be like, I'm just going to split up. Now we're
No.
Smart Wrap 2. Everybody works for Smart Wrap 2.
No, you have to be doing different things. Otherwise, you're going to carry that EMOD with you no
Yeah.
matter what you're doing. But so if you're, one restaurant and another restaurant, they're just going to consider you both, under the same hat, if you will. So yeah, there are other, issues. And then bringing in your business lawyer. So sometimes there's a partnership over here, but there's not over here.
Yeah.
And do you really want to put that underneath that partnership? Or do you want to keep it separately? So there's all kinds of questions that need to be asked. And that's part of what you do as a CFO, as opposed to the bookkeeper who's just going to make whatever you decided happen on paper.
Yeah.
So, you can class different things. So you could have one corporation with all of these different activities underneath them and then just class on your books, which is what your bookkeeper is going to tell you. Well, I can class them and then you can see the different P&Ls. But I don't know if you should separate them or not.
Right.
And that's what we, venture into. That's one of the things that a CFO is good for, I'm always listening for the other voice. So I'm listening for the voice of the insurance agent, the business lawyer, the CPA, the tax man, the IRS.
So you're putting this all together and saying, okay, based on all of these competing interests,
Right.
this is the path that the company should take.
Right.
Right. So because your client is the company,
Exactly.
even if the business owner is the one that talked to you, right?
We have to take everybody's, best.
Because sometimes they'll be like, "Hey, I think we get it," and you're like, "Whoa, okay."
Yeah.
That's not going to help your company.
Exactly. Well, then there's, there's other things like business owners. As business owners, we tend to steal from ourselves in ways we don't see, and that's another thing that
You mean buying
I bring
stupid
to their
stuff?
well, and having income that's off the books.
Oh.
Because they don't want to pay taxes on it, but that's great. But your bank is
That
going to look
seems
at that
pretty
same.
risky. I wouldn't want to-
Yeah, exactly.
No.
So if I went and did a project for someone and I just told them, well, just write that to me personally, and I just kept it off the books. And I'm not talking about doing things illegally. I'm just talking about things that we do as business owners that we don't think about as, don't steal from yourself. You need the income on the books because you're going to have to go get lending at some point in time, and
Maybe
you
if
want
you
the
wanna
bank to
sell
see
your
it all.
business, right?
You want to sell your business at some point. What's your end game here? Be careful with what you're running through the business or not running through the business. For whatever reason you're doing it. Sometimes we're just trying to avoid having to pay taxes on things that we don't feel like we should have to pay taxes on. And other times we're just trying to build up a lot of expense so that
Do you
that
counsel
bottom line
people
is
on
different.
like because the amount of effort that you spend trying to avoid something, the benefit is, in my experience, been pretty small compared to if you took all that energy and
Exactly.
do what you did, which is focus. You just it's defense. The defense isn't as good as offense.
I agree.
And so you try to say, hey, listen, what you're doing here is you're kind of messing around in the weeds about taxes when you should be happy to pay taxes because you're making boatloads of money because you focus your business properly.
That is my point. You know, if I have a year in my own business where I'm having to pay a boatload of taxes,
that's a good sign.
You know, it's a good sign. It means I've grown from last year.
Either that or your accountant just didn't fill out anything.
Right. I need to, garbage in, garbage out. I need to look at how did I account for everything before I gave it to my CPA. Absolutely. So, but yeah, there is a catch-22 with that. You know, we think that if we're going to keep this off the books or we're going to do this a little differently or we're going to run these expenses through that we're saving on taxes. But at the end of the day, you're not reflecting the actual growth that's there in your company. Yeah. So then you're always wondering why I'm always broke at the end of the year. Why can't I grow? Get out of your own way. That's as a business owner, that's the number one thing.
Yeah, I think there's a book out right now called "Get Out of Your Way."
Is it?
Yeah, I'll have to show it to you.
It's probably pretty good. Yeah. It's probably a pretty good read.
We also talked a little bit about sort of social media and building your personal brand. And I've been following you now on LinkedIn. You've been posting some videos there that are
just a few
kind of interesting.
Yes.
You have your Facebook business page set up yet?
I don't. Okay, so I've just launched the BNI side of my name. So I've changed everything on the BNI side. And now I need to change everything on my social media. So my LinkedIn profile, my Facebook profile, I need to launch my webpage. And there's just a lot of little things that need to be done. And it's January 29th. And even though I'm not focused on bookkeeping, that's what my firm does. So it has been a very hectic month. No excuses. I still have time that I can be in there and getting things done. But that is the next step, definitely. And it's the hardest side of what I do because it's like I'm like every other business owner. I have to wear 16 hats, and that's one of them that I don't really. The making of the videos and stuff, I've enjoyed that part, but doing the uploading the logo and changing my profile and writing the content and all of that is like.
Yeah, that can be a bit tough.
I need to get it done.
What time? Like, here's the thing: I just read this interesting article about creativity and time of day, and this premise of this gentleman's article was that a lot of people waste the most creative, analytical learning time of the day by going to the gym.
Yeah.
And you don't have the ability.
First thing in the morning. Yeah.
Right. So between 5 and 7, if you read or learn something or work on those things that and you do that 5-6 days a week, in 18 months you're pretty far down the learning path.
Absolutely.
Whereas if you went to the gym, you'd be a little bit in more better, shape, but you can still go to the gym in the middle of the morning or the middle of the afternoon.
Right.
So I'm definitely going to be trying that out. And so that's where you could learn your logo placement, jot down your, blog idea, or just talk into the microphone.
Yes.
Because that's the easiest part. It's hard to actually write a 10-paragraph article, but it's super easy to transcribe one.
That's true.
Yeah. So
that's a good tip. I like that.
Yeah, I learned that from this guy that wrote a book called Book in the Box Method. And you can either get him to do it for you for $3,500, or he gives you the book and you can do it yourself. That book is free. Everything's in it, and that's part of that whole thing of giving away the secret sauce.
Right.
He gives away the secret sauce, and he has like a 6 or 7 figure income business for people that are like, oh yeah, that's great. Actually, I want you to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't figure out how to turn on the record button or something like that.
I used to teach QuickBooks workshops for that very reason, because there'd be 20 people in the room, and 10 of them would come up to you afterwards and go, thanks for teaching me all that. Now I know what I never want to do. Right. Can you do this for me? So
it's basically,
I can understand
they
that.
know now what to look for when they hire,
Right.
So if I I needed to hire a pool guy, I'd be like, okay, so I know how the pump works. I know how all this stuff works. And so when this guy says that thing's not working, I can tell if he's telling the truth or not.
Right. Exactly. That was part of the reason I did workshops, was to educate business owners and what to look for.
Yeah.
So, check up on your bookkeeper. Is she doing the right job? Or check up on yourself. Are you doing the right job if you're doing it yourself?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So when are you going to have all of this in place? When's
my
the
goal
launch?
is the middle of
When's
February.
the ribbon cutting?
Yeah, right. The middle of February to have everything in place, because I'm the featured speaker, and
you should have it on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of tied to that,
it's
isn't it?
kind of tied to
right?
that a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm the featured speaker the third week in
Valentine's
February. So it's definitely, it has to be done by then, because So, but
What
as
day
far
of the week
as
is Valentine's Day?
I don't know. It's the 6th. It's probably a Thursday. I think it's a Thursday, because the 6th is a Wednesday, which would make the 13th a Wednesday. Has to be a Thursday.
Are you kind of like that with calendars? You can just kind of like...
No.
Okay. So it's a Thursday.
It is a Thursday. So the following
Right.
Wednesday, so it'll be the 21st, I'm the featured speaker at my BNI group. So I definitely want to have it all done by then. That's my goal. And
so I'm going to look into this and see how you can have a Valentine's launch.
Theme.
Because you've got definitely the love of your business.
Absolutely.
But it's the love of your life.
The love of my life.
So you got both.
Yeah. I do.
You're really styling now.
I am a blessed woman. That is for sure.
All right. I like to plan parties, so maybe there's a something.
You can be my event planner.
Oh, at least I can order the wine. So.
Oh, I'm on board now. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I think that's given everybody a real good idea of who you are, what you're passionate about, and it'd be good to have you back 6 months. Check out how it's going.
Absolutely, it'd be my pleasure.
Awesome.
And get your feedback on following me on LinkedIn.
Right on. Awesome. Thanks for stopping by,
Awesome.
Melissa.
Thank you so much, Tim.
Bye-bye.